Good morning and welcome to another edition of Coffee with Tom and Joanne. I'm Tom Matthews.
And I'm Joanne Toronto. Thanks for joining us. Today, we have a great topic, and we wanted to talk about what happens for our seller clients in particular. What happens for sellers after the purchase and sale? Because the front end of listing your house, the preparation, the pricing analysis, the marketing materials, the photos, the staging, it's a lot of intense work, and it really gives you an opportunity to build a really strong relationship with your realtor. But then the purchase and sale is signed, you've secured a buyer, you're past any home inspection. So what happens after that purchase and sale? It feels kind of quiet, right, Tom?
It does. It does. So Joanne and I, kind of through trial and error, have learned and have created like a little checklist that we send to our sellers after we sign purchase and sale. But what's really important is to stay in communication. So Joanne and I check in with our sellers every Tuesday, communicate with them and give them milestones. But like the highlighted items for sellers is like you have to maintain your property. A lot of
Yeah.
sellers feel like, man, I've signed my purchase and sale. This buyer is buying my property. So
Yep.
they stop maintaining it. And you have to maintain the property right through the closing. And it's important to keep the house in good order for the appraisal.
Hmm.
So that's probably the first big milestone that happens. And that typically happens, within 10 days after signing the purchase and sale. An appraiser comes in. And so, we like to say in real estate as realtors, we have to convince three parties of the value of a home. The first party is a seller, convince them this is the right price to sell their home. The second party is that buyer who's going to be buying that property. And then the third is the appraiser. Once
Hmm.
we've done that, we've really done our job. So,
Right.
Joanne, after the appraisal is done, what does the seller typically have to worry about then?
So after the appraisal is done, the seller really needs to be in coordination with their attorney because they will need to be drawing up a deed. So you'll have to ask your attorney to draw up a quitclaim deed for the property. And then you'll want to coordinate your moving, right? So
Yes.
it's a good time to start interviewing moving companies. Using a referral from your agent is a great way to get a good moving company that has a great reputation. You could also ask friends or family, but generally we tell people to have at least two quotes for moving, just so that you know what you need. And also it depends on where you're going. So you may need to have a yard sale or an estate sale with a company. You may start having junk removal or making donations to people in need. And all of those things can be done in coordination with vendors that your realtor is friendly with. We oftentimes will direct people to household goods recycling, which is in Acton. And basically, they're a large warehouse where you can drop off during certain hours on certain days. And you can drop off any household items that are in good shape, including furniture, linens, kitchenwares, and so forth. So it's a great place, and you can get a tax donation for that. And you'll want to have your movers scheduled for at least the day, if not 2 days before the closing. And the reason that we say this is that we like you to be out of the house by noontime the day before the closing. That's an ideal scenario. If you need to sleep on an air mattress or hang out overnight, that's fine, but you really should be moved out by noontime the day before your closing. The reason for this is that if anything comes up towards the closing, we want to make sure that you're ready to perform at the time that's in the
Right.
contract. So, generally speaking, a buyer will want to come back to the house. What's that like, Tom, before closing?
Yeah, the buyer wants to come back and do what they call their final walkthrough. And the provision in the contract is that you will deliver the home in broom cleaned condition. The reason that Joanne and I suggest the night before is that we have seen moving companies get delayed. A truck
Mhm.
breaks down, something happens. And if you wait till the 11th hour, if you are unable to perform the day of closing because you haven't vacated the property, it can cost you thousands of dollars because the
Mhm.
buyer might have a rate that is only locked through the closing date. And just to extend the rate for a day, if you're in a climate like we're in now with rates moving, it can cost thousands of dollars.
Mhm.
You might have to pay for the buyer to have their stuff sitting on a moving truck. So, our job is to put as much money in our clients' pockets and to make the transaction as smooth as possible. And that comes along with, having these checklists to make sure that the buyers are ready. So Joanne asked the question, like, what does it look like? So the day of, buyers come through to do their final walkthrough. They're making sure the lawn's been mowed. They're checking to see how much oil or propane might be in the tanks. They're testing all the appliances, running the water, flushing the toilets, making sure the property was in the condition it was in when they had their home inspection.
Right.
And, they want to make sure that you are also ready for them. Because once they sign the deed and you get your money, everything is theirs.
Mhm.
And, if no one wants to be chasing a seller because the seller left behind, you know, 50 cans of paint that's impossible to get rid of.
Right.
So like
Right.
you really want to like get the house as close to ready as soon as possible. So, we
Yep.
typically meet with our sellers, do a walkthrough with them after the PNS and take them through this. So, the other thing too, and this is from the attorney, but when you're drafting up the deed, you want to give the attorney all of your mortgage information so that they can pay off your mortgage and have that ready as well. And, what can often comes up is you got a home equity line of credit and you thought that, and then you did another home equity line of credit and you thought the first one was what we call discharged. But
Mhm.
the attorneys get busy and sometimes the attorneys forget to discharge those HELOCs and you have a title issue. It's important for your attorney, most attorneys start 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time. And for you just to be available and cooperative with your attorney to make sure that everything gets done properly.
Right. And so once you've moved through some of those items, you'll also want to order your final utilities.
Yep.
So if you have municipal utilities, like in Concord, we have our own light and power plan. You need to order a final reading because the electric bill stays with the property. Versus if you're on the national grid or EverSource grid, you will then order a final bill based on your closing date and then provide them with your forwarding information. You'll also want to do a final reading on your oil tank and your propane tank if you have those, so that the buyer will then purchase the oil and propane from you at the rate that you purchased it from your provider. And so that's something that's accounted for on the closing disclosure,
Yep.
and it will be an adjustment at closing. And you'll also want to turn off, schedule a turn off of your internet and your cable and any other subscriptions you have, like an alarm subscription or a home monitoring subscription. You'll also at some point want to think about canceling your homeowner's insurance, but we generally ask you to leave that until after the deed is recorded after closing. Then you can make that phone
Yes.
call and you'll get a prorated adjustment back from the homeowner's insurance company. So we definitely want to keep the house insured, and it's not a good idea to schedule it for the day of the closing, because then if the closing gets delayed by a day or two, your insurance could cancel and you're so busy with moving that you totally don't even realize it. So that's an
And
after
things
closing phone call.
and things happen, and we've unfortunately seen things happen where houses have pipes break and so forth. And so, that's a big one too. I'd rather a seller spend an extra $10 having insurance in place for an extra week than
Right.
cut it a couple of days short and have a catastrophic event happen. Because we've been doing this 20 years, sold over 700 properties, and we haven't seen it all, but we've
Yeah.
seen a lot.
And one thing that I want to say is that even though the contract says that you'll leave the house in broom clean condition, we typically recommend that you hire a cleaning
Yeah.
company to come through after you've moved out to do what they call a move out, move in clean, where the crew goes through, they clean inside cabinets, inside appliances, all the window sills, and just really get the place sparkling clean. Because
Yeah.
you know what? Whoever's moving in is probably going to clean it themselves, but it's a nice gesture to leave your property the way that you would want it to be left for you and what
Right.
your definition of clean is. And I can tell you from experience that you will be so overwhelmed from the packing and moving process, that cleaning, you think that you can just do it as, after you move out, and you're just going to be spent.
Exhausting.
So it's better
Yeah.
to just schedule it ahead of time. And if you're going to be out by 12 noon, schedule your cleaners for 1, give yourself a little bit of buffer, and then the cleaners come through, and then the buyers get home from work the night before closing. They come to the house after work, they do their walkthrough, and then everything is nice and smooth for the closing the next day.
Awesome. Great, Joanne. Well, thank you. This has been awesome to share with people a nice checklist of what to do after they sign a purchase and sale. So
Yeah.
thank you for watching Coffee with Tom and Joanne. I'm Tom Matthews.
And I'm Joanne Toronto. Cheers.